Marky Billson here, Tri-City Sports Now. Follow us on Facebook so you can watch the show on archive at 1420 WEMB Sports Radio. And also watch us on, you can watch some of the history on my own personal YouTube channel, Marky Billson. Just go there. And Instagram. We're doing Instagram now. And of course, the nice thing about Instagram, of course, a lot of our interviews, like what happened with Rick Goslin earlier today, look, a lot to discuss about the Senior Committee Pro Football Hall of Fame. But we wanted to talk about that and go a little bit longer. And so that actually became about a 20-minute segment, I believe we did with Rick Goslin. I just didn't want to let him go. And so that won't be able to go to Instagram because videos on Instagram can only be 10 minutes in length. But in a way, that's nice because I do understand when we put this in podcast form, you know, I talk about Knock-Home Nation. I like listening to Knock-Home Nation, but you got to put aside 45 minutes to listen to Knock-Home Nation. Sometimes that's, you know, wait a minute. I like to do it when I'm cooking dinner. I think that podcasts are great. And for that matter, Tri-City Sports Now, you can become a gourmet on by listening, by watching the archives of our show here on your iPhone and all that. And don't dismiss that because I used to do, I do that myself. And I feel very comfortable, cooking when listening to podcasts and all this. So not everything has to be, a minute egg. You can actually take some time. You don't have to nuke everything in a microwave. You can, bake some stuff and have many different dishes and use the oven and stove like I've been doing over the course of time. You do it by just watching the like I said, listening to the podcast. But yeah, it is when you have a 10-minute podcast or less than 10 minute, a lot easier to watch it. That leaves you with something wanting a little bit more than we do now. Maybe we need to have, instead of these, breaks, when you have breaks after every 10 minutes here on Tri-City Sports Now. That'd be something here. Did want to, by the way, if you like cooking, that's great, but it is tough to cook Chinese food. I mean, I'm sorry, I have used Le Choy just like everyone else, but there's always something missing, isn't there? I mean, that's not Chinese food. The Le Choy egg rolls are not what you would get at, say, Asian House. Especially in that Happy Box meal. You heard me talk about it. You'll get appetizers like the crab ragoon. You'll get egg rolls. You'll get rice. You'll get vegetables. And then your choice of 20 mouth-watering Chinese dishes. The traditionals. But they're there. Your favorite will be there. Want to check it out? Go to goasianhouse.com. See it. They'll give you the address for it. You'll also see, if you want to know where the restaurant is, halfway, basically between Johnson City and Jonesboro on Market Street. Shops at West Market. You turn off a leisure lane. It's about a mile on your way to Jonesboro, roughly, past the intersection of Market and State of Franklin. You can keep going down there. Shops on West Market. Chance to go shopping. Chance to eat. Chance to save money, because you mention my name, you get 10% off. Marky Billson near Tri-City Sports Now. It's Asian House. You want to go there. And by the way, that Happy Box meal, still pretty economical. Lots of food, enough to feed really 2 people. And it starts at, for vegetarian, $9.99, and they chop off 10% of that if you mention my name when you order. How can you beat that? So, you're going to want to check that out. The NCAA has been checking out the Tennessee Volunteers. Ooh, now it's happened before, but Jeremy Pruitt, he commits an NCAA violation. Hold off before you call him another Bobby Collins. Okay, just do that. Yeah. Bobby Collins was the coach at SMU. When they were paying the players underneath. When the movie The Program in 1993, there was actually a character named Bobby Collins. They wanted to show that football, what goes on in a college football program. And they wanted to show some of the seamy underbelly of it. They had a co-ed taking tests for one of the players by the name of Bobby Collins. That was, sort of the tribute to the old SMU coach. Anyway, Jeremy Pruitt has been committing violations. Hold on. You see, Pruitt mentioned Plainville High School, which is his alma mater, in a congratulatory tweet from his verified account in March. You see, they won the Alabama State title. Wasn't even directed to Plainview's football team. Like I said, it was the Hoops team. But the Tennessee Compliance Department staff member saw the tweet, notified Pruitt, and said, you know what, you've committed a violation. So he deleted it 37 minutes after he posted it, because it was, are you ready for this, an impermissible endorsement of a high school team and its coach. Tennessee's compliance office provided rules education to Pruitt and the social media staffer, and the SEC and the NCAA took no further action. Why would you? And there are just so many of these stupid NCAA rules. Pruitt's tweet was one of 9 NCAA violations that Tennessee reported first 6 months of this year. Yeah, maybe the rule book's a little bit too big. You know, maybe this is, we can arrest you if you don't have someone waving a lantern 10 feet ahead of your horseless carriage. These are level 3 violations. Don't think that you're going to get the death penalty for the Vols. Don't worry, you know. The bylaw that Pruitt violated, you don't care what the bylaw, it's just ridiculous. And I do think that, yeah, stuff like that, Eddie O'Brien stuff like that, there's sort of Jim Bouton passes away, ball 4 right there, that's going to eventually, it's going to be one of the things that will eventually have the big conferences, maybe adding on some more teams, maybe not, break away from the NCAA and start playing by their own rules. Because if you can't send a tweet out congratulating your high school alma mater for winning the state basketball title, if that's somehow a violation, then the rule is wrong. Let's face that. Now, of course, they're not, I mean, you know, there's a difference between, let's say, being arrested and being convicted. All right? I mean, you have, you know, a freedom fighter in Birmingham, Alabama in the 60s, you know, marching and protesting may get arrested, but he's likely not going to be convicted. It's not really going to go on his record. You know, what are they going to do? You know, they say, okay, here you go. Terry Schiavo, they had that whole thing. I remember a picture of a 10-year-old boy trying to go give a drink of water to Terry Schiavo. Well, no, actually, he was trespassing. So they arrested the 10-year-old boy. And there was a very horrifying picture of a 10-year-old boy with handcuffs on and all that. You know what happens there? I am assuming, okay, I am speculating, that 10-year-old boy is not going to go to reform school. That 10-year-old boy, they're basically, here's the cuffs, it's formality, here you go. Okay, we're taking you away to from the situation. Don't come back. Here's the cuffs. Goodbye. Okay, we're dropping everything. I don't even know if you take them to the station house. Now, maybe you do. But I have not yet heard. At least I hope so. If some people know that that 10-year-old boy then did 8 more years in reform school of hard labor, breaking rocks, please let me know, because it's the greatest injustice I've ever heard of then. But yes, I mean, that's generally what happened. You're not going to, you know, hear, he was arrested and all that. Arrested is not conviction. You remember that. So, you know, and that's the same thing here. Violation and all. It's not, like I said, the NCAA said, okay, you deleted the tweet in 30 seconds. Who cares? Even they real. NCAA, by the way, is very, very crippled. They're never going to do the TV ban. That would just be, the last time it was done, 95 with Ole Miss. Would just be cutting your nose off to spite your face. And, you know, so they're not going to do it. But I've said this before. Penn State got 2 years with the Sandusky thing. That actually was less of a penalty, at least in terms of length of time that you could not go to a bowl game, than what Clemson got for a, depending on who you talk to, $500 or $1,000 under-the-table payment to a player who never played for Clemson. NCAA is just so afraid of the big-time conferences moving away and making their own rules that they're afraid to punish people. Not that Pruitt's tweet was worthy of any punishment whatsoever. To tell you the truth, they ought to take the rule off, whatever it is. It is, in fact, okay, you want to know what the rule is right here? It is NCAA bylaw 11.3.2.8 stating, an athletic staff member shall not promote or endorse a prospective student-athlete's team or coach or an athletics facility that is primarily used by prospective student-athletes. Wonderful. It goes to a tweet saying, congrats, winning a state high school championship. Get out of here. That rule needs to be changed. Okay, there you go. Tri-City Sports Now. I am Marky Billson. I was talking a little bit about Jim Bouton. He was the story of he was my monologue at the beginning. And one thing about Bouton, and I mentioned this, how, he really did change a lot about how sports was covered. I mean, I know there were sports writers, Dick Young, who I do respect, really came out against Bouton because what he was doing, taking the mask off. Oh, look, ball players like to chase women. Well, everybody knew that. I mean, come on, if you play high school sports, you were on a team, boys team in high school, they're going to chase women. I mean, this is not groundbreaking, earth-shattering stuff. Again, maybe you'd like 20-something and maybe even 30-something-year-old men to be a little more mature. I do get that. But, chasing young men chasing young women is not necessarily news. But he wrote about it. And he wrote about a lot of other stuff, too. Mentioned that. Here's the thing, though. In many ways, that book, Ball 4, gave us freedom that I don't know here in the media, in the Tri-Cities, that we have fully embraced. Now, I try to. I'm the guy who says, oh, Frankie DeBusk was named the athletic director at Dobbins-Bennett. It's about time. They need a big-time AD there. They need a name. That sort of commentary has generally not been stated, except on this show, a whole heck of a lot. And it's high time that it be said, because you know it, I know it, and everybody knows it, and I'm not really breaking anything down. I've actually been called a shock jock for saying things like this, because, as I've mentioned many, many times before, I've often felt that many in the Tri-Cities media view themselves more of an extension of the public relations department than being quote-unquote true journalists. And sports talk radio is not necessarily known for having great journalistic prestige, to tell you the truth. Well, I do try. And I just say, talk about the area should be more cosmopolitan. Yeah, probably behind the times, that sort of thing. In many ways, Jim Bouton, and for that matter, Dick Young, a generation before, when he would write, hey, it was a typical 400-foot drive for the hitter, 200 feet up, 200 feet down. That really wasn't done a whole lot before Dick Young. Well, Bouton made it okay that we could, write about some stuff that everybody knew about, everybody was talking about, but to put it in print, shocking! Made him something of a baseball leper. There was the old Pete Rose line when he saw him screaming out, and I will clean up the language here, but yes, blank you Shakespeare was one of Rose's bench jockey. He was going up against the establishment. But by going up against the establishment, maybe it did empower others. That's what you got to look at. I also, like I said, by the way, Ball 4, it was briefly, I've spoken about this before, it's briefly, very briefly, a TV series that co-starred Ben Davidson, old lineman for the Oakland Raiders, as well as Samuel Wright, was the co-star of Enos, for all you Dukes of Hazzard fans out there. Those were player, and the show did not last much. Bouton was on it himself. Bouton also became a sportscaster. He, and this is, again, creativity, and there is definitely room for this. He wasn't real big on reporting scores. He wanted to do the story on, say, the senior citizen who was an athlete. Was competing, in a marathon or something like that. That's what he would want to do. Now, I want to know what the scores are. But there's space for both, in my opinion. And also, I talk about, boy, I do not like changing baseball because I think baseball at its core, at its whole, played like it was prior to the DH, is about as perfect of a sport as you can get. Prior to the DH, it even had a pretty decent pace. But you know what? So I'm not big on some of the changes in baseball. Of course, you look at this, it's probably a good idea that the spitball went away, and all that. And one of the things, though, Bowden did that changed baseball, not only in sports, in the way that we looked at athletes and that we covered them, maybe giving us in the media more freedom to report the truth. And we should not forget that, is that he also was one of the initial investors of Big League Chew. And I've talked about this, changes in baseball. I'm all for, it's probably time that we, the ball player chewing tobacco, let's get rid of that, You don't even have the ball player with the side chew, the loose leaf, who chews loose leaf tobacco anymore? I mean, that just is so, if you're chewing tobacco, you're doing, snuff, you're doing smokeless, you're doing that sort of, pinch between your cheek and gum. Not, in the bag, pulling it out, that sort of thing, which, I don't know. When I was chewing tobacco, I always liked the side chew a little bit more, but that's just me. So I was a little old-fashioned, I guess. It was sweeter, it wasn't quite as pungent. And, but yeah, Big League Chew really did go a long way in replacing chewing tobacco, and certainly in the minds of a lot of kids. Somebody wrote, saw on the internet, how many lives did he save, by having kids? How many jaws and faces did he save, maybe at the expense of some teeth, by switching ball players with Big League Chew to gum? It was good gum, too. Really was. I was never big on grape, but the, bubble gum flavor, that was good. Yeah. It was so good, I remember once someone offering me it used. I declined. Okay, but that's, it still has flavor. No, this is good gum. I'm sure it is, but you've had it. No, I'll have my own and chew my own. I don't need you to start. Thank you very much. But that was how good it was. So, anyway, there you are. By the way, Steve Squeak Jones of the East Tennessee Sports Forum on Facebook. He writes on Facebook, on our 1420 WEMB Sports Radio Facebook page, why do pitchers not want to master knuckleball to prolong their careers? They generally fill the stands with fans. Well, Bowden tried to. It's not that easy to throw the knuckleball. What I see is a lot of times it is not so much knuckleballs, but if you are, after your career as a fireballer, maybe after you lose something in your 30s, generally you learn how to, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, pitch. And I'm going to give you a picture from the old days, Frank Tanana. Frank Tanana used to throw almost as hard as Nolan Ryan. It was on the old Angels, Ryan and Tanana. Well, then Tanana kind of, wasn't quite the pitcher anymore. He sort of blew out his arm. Started throwing break-in stuff. One year with the Red Sox, he was 4-10. He just wasn't getting it done. But his hometown team, Tanana, now throwing basically junk, really did resurrect his career. And his most famous game was as a 34-year-old junk baller, no longer, again, not the knuckleball pitcher, but, sinker, slider, that sort of thing. And last day of the 87 season, yeah, I'm talking 32-year-old baseball, okay, sue me. He beats the Blue Jays 1-0 last day of the season for the American League East title. No wild cards in those days. Putting the Tigers into the playoffs, his hometown team, and knocking out the Blue Jays, who had had the lead for much of the year on the last day of the season. That's Frank Tanana's most famous game. He will be remembered by every Detroit baseball fan for the rest of time for that. So, why don't you switch to a knuckleball? I mean, it has happened. Tim Wakefield was a position player, wasn't getting it done, couldn't throw that hard. Okay, I'll try to make it as a knuckleball pitcher. I think he has the Red Sox record for most pitching victories. Think about that. So it has been done, but knuckleball is not easy to master. That'd be your answer. And I think a lot of people just find success if they're going to go that route in the sinker and slider. Also, I think that in today's baseball, yeah, I mean, right now it's throw as hard as you can for as long as you can, which is usually 5 innings, and after 28 you're on your own. And I don't think that's the way to go. Tri-City Sports Now will continue. Some more baseball talk and all this. By the way, I've got a story. I've got a big story. I've got a huge story. Steve Spurrier is returning to coaching. That's what I'm going to lead with when we come back. Tri-City Sports Now.